everybody, my name is Roberta Peel from Oregon Trail Silver. Today we're going to go ahead and talk about jump rings and some of the things that you can do with jump rings and how to make your own. This right here is a dragon scale bracelet that I've made. It's 100% silver. It's probably one of my favorites. I've gotten a number of samples here of things that I've done using jump rings and learning to link them together. Another thing that you can do with them is use them on earrings, you know, for the ends of earrings, or like on the ends of a chain if you bought a chain and you need to attach a clasp. Sometimes you'll find that when you buy jump rings that they can be really, really expensive. Or you can, you know, buy a kit that's going to help you make your own. Since I make my jump rings in bulk and I make a lot of them at a lot of them at one time, I'm going to go ahead and show off. This one right here is the new version of the PePe Tools Jump Ring Maker. So I'm going to show you guys how I actually use this to make my jump rings. The one that I have and that I usually use is over 10 years old. I've had it for a long time. I've been doing chainmail a lot longer than I've been soldering. So this right here is our jump ring maker. It comes with a full set of mandrels. It comes with 20 mandrels. One of the things that you're absolutely going to have is an H30 handpiece for your Fordham. And you can see that mine here has a little sleeve on it. And pop that off because I can't use it with the sleeve on. So if you don't have a Fordham, it's going to be really difficult to find a way to use this because it's actually designed to be used on it. And then it also comes with the mandrels to actually make your coils. This right here is for the cutter. This right here is how you actually cut your pieces. It's a good idea to have some masking tape as well, or painter's tape as well, and I'll show you why. So the blade that it actually comes with is going to be this saw blade right here. There's also these ones PePe calls the Goldies as well. They have two different diameters of them. There's a 1.5 inch and then there's the 1 1/4 inch. And it just kind of depends on how far down the blade has to go. So, because you don't want to accidentally cut through on something. So anyhow, we're going to go ahead and show you guys how to use this. Okay, so you can see that I've taken some self-tapping screws and just bolted this down to the desk. It's not going anywhere. I have all 4 of these holes right here have been screwed down. And this right here is your mandrel base. This is what we're actually going to be using to put a mandrel into. It's a good idea to know exactly what kind or what size of jump rings that you're trying to make. So I have this book here. I think I've had this book forever. It's an artistic wire book. It's advanced chainmail. And one of the things you're going to notice when you're doing chainmail is that it's always going to give you the inner diameter, or what they call the ID of the jump rings that you want to actually have on hand. So for this one, I want a 3.5 millimeter at 20 gauge and an 18 gauge 5.5 millimeter. So I already know that I'm going to need a 3.5 millimeter, which we have right here, and all the way up to I think the 5 millimeter. Yeah. So the 4.5 millimeter actually is where you start getting your holes. So for right now, I'm just going to go ahead and get this sit on in there. I'm going to hold the base on the end just like a drill bit and just kind of give it a little start. Okay, so this right here is going to be for my 20 gauge. Alright, so this right here is my 20 gauge wire. I buy it in the coil, and I usually buy, you know, pretty good size coils, between 25 and 50 feet depending on what it is that I'm doing. This right here is going to be your item number for Rio Grande. It is 100320. This is for 20 gauge. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to find the end and have yourself a pair of clippers ready. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to find the end of it, and I'm not going to try and bend the wire a whole lot. This is also dead soft. So what you're probably going to need me to zoom in. So what you're going to see that I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and take the end, bend it a little bit, slip it inside of the actual mandrel holder, and then start turning. Now as I'm turning, all I'm trying to do, and I'm trying to keep this coil pretty tight, but as I turn, I'm just going to go ahead and let it seat itself up against the previous part of the coil. And then turn this as needed. I like to keep my hands fairly close to the mandrel, but that's also just me. Try not to let the wire kink back on itself. And you want your coil to be really kind of tight. And I like to go down to probably about 3/4 of an inch down to the end before I cut off my tail. And when I do, you're going to find it's going to have a nice tight coil right there. Okay? Now, slip it off. And I save all of my scrap. So I'm just going to go ahead and clip the tails off from the coil. Don't bend the coil too much. And there you have it. Now we're going to cut it. So when it comes to actually putting your arbor on and all the pieces that are actually going to be used to zip across and cut your coil up, you're going to find that this comes with an Allen key. Try and keep this Allen key with your tool. If you're having trouble slipping it on, just go ahead and loosen up these inset screws right here. And then you should be able to clip it on and off fairly easily. Now you're going to want to put on your arbor. Okay, and this is going to be set up the same way you'd put on, like, for example, anything, any of your silicone wheels or any of your attachments. You're going to need to open it up just a little bit wider than you're probably used to, though, until it slips on. And I like to make sure it's nice and tight up against the very top of the H30 handpiece. And you have to have an H30 handpiece. You can't do this with a quick change. So the blade that we're actually going to be using today is going to be the 1 1/4 inch. And you'll find, keep your foot off the pedal as you're doing this. In fact, do that, shut off whatever switch you have for your Fordham. You don't want to accidentally turn your Fordham on when you're doing this. Even though they're thin, these blades are super sharp. So what you're going to want to do is, you'll see the little notch and the directional arrow on your blade. You know, and I know, that on my standard Fordham, which does not have reverse, by the way, I know that the arbor itself is going to be turning this way, so I want to make sure that the blade is going to be going in the same direction. Okay? So go ahead and line it up on this little notch. Put the top of the arbor on. Make sure that everything is lined up. You don't want this to be too terribly tight. Okay? Again, it's really, really, really super important that you keep your foot away from the pedal on your Fordham. Okay, this is incorrect because it's not lined up. There. Gotta mess up at least once. So we're going to go ahead and tighten that on there. I know sometimes when I'm switching out silicone wheels, I'll turn on the silicone, I'll kind of like roll the Fordham forward with my foot pedal. Don't do that with this, to screw things on. Don't do that with this. So the next thing you're going to notice is that your PePe has a little line. You want to make sure that your blade, when you slide it back in, is going to line up perfectly with that little line. Okay, this is really important because this is spaced out to zip and guide along the very top, and you want to make sure that your blade stays where it's at. So go ahead and line it up, look at it straight, and tighten it down. So as you can see, the blade itself is right there in line with that little line, that tick mark. Okay? And that's what you're looking for. Alright, next thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and put the coil that we had made, and this is why I cut off the tails, because sometimes if the tails are overhanging, what I found is going to happen is that it's going to, it won't sit flush. So I'm just going to go ahead, the tails on the ends. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to slip it on the inside. See this little line right here? This is so when you actually put the top of when you actually put the cutting tool down, this is so the blade can actually sink in. So you don't want to make your coils so long that they go past this line. So what I'll do is I'll just go ahead and get some PePe lube and just kind of run it across the top and make sure that it's butted up against the edge. I saw someone else had used painter's tape, and I really like that idea, or masking tape. So I'm just going to go ahead and tape the very top of it. Make sure the top of it's free of debris. Give it a quick rub on, and this is to keep a majority of your jump rings from flying out. Keep in mind that this is a high-speed rotary cutting tool, and safety is 100% going to be your utmost concern. A finished product is just a byproduct of you know, your safety precautions. So next thing I'm going to do, you'll notice that this right here is actually kind of spring-loaded. Should keep you from tightening it down too much. So we're going to go ahead and put the top on. These nice little knobs that they have. So now I'm just going to go ahead and look at it from the side. And then try and keep it level, especially the closer that you get to it, get it pretty level. And I'm not even gripping the knobs. I'm just barely kind of finger tightening them. And I'm not even going so far as to finger tighten it. I'm just letting it set down and get a little bit of a grip. There you have it. Okay, so now when it comes time to actually cut, there's a couple things to remember. Keep your foot off from the pedal of your Fordham until you're actually ready to go. That's should be number 2. Number 1, please, please, please wear safety glasses. I mean, I've done this before, and if you don't know what you're doing, it does take a little bit of practice. It can be a little bit intimidating at first. You want to make sure that you're wearing safety glasses, because if your jump rings come flying out, which sometimes the tails or the ends can, or like for example, if you break a blade, I'm going to show you how you don't do that. If you break a blade, the pieces will come flying out everywhere. You know, I'll be honest with you, when I first started doing this, I wore a full face mask. So one of those full shields. So just mind your eyes, mind your safety. Okay. Now, what you're going to find is that the top of the cutting tool is going to fit snugly and beautifully right over the very top. Okay. The blade, because you've got it lined up properly, the blade itself is going to zip straight down, and it's going to cut right across the very top of those, right across the very top of these jump ring coils that we made. Another thing, when you do this, and I know that some people like to pull the arbor itself towards them, the cutting arbor towards them. I don't do that, because I've done it before where even just a little twist, and I've broken my blade, and I've ruined a bunch of jump rings. Okay, so what I do is I'll start all the way back here in the end. I'm going to hold this steady and make sure that it's level, and push it all the way across. Okay, so I'm going to hold the arbor, and I actually push the base. Okay, so put on your safety glasses, take a deep breath, make sure your hands are steady. Make sure that this isn't pushing down either. You don't want to push down, you just want to rest it on the top. You notice my thumb right here. Now crank it up at full speed. When I'm done, I'm holding perfectly still until the blade comes to a complete stop. Again, if you twist it, you're going to break a blade. You know, pieces are going to go flying everywhere, and you don't want to hurt yourself. This is my favorite part. It's where I get to see what I did. Take your safety glasses off so you can see. There you go. Pop these in your container and make some more. So when it comes to cleaning off the burrs, because they're saw cut, they're not going to have quite so many burrs. What you're going to want to do is get yourself a tumbler, a rotary tumbler with some steel shot. I've always used a little bit of Dawn dish soap, just as a kind of like a lubricant and a cleaner. And what that's going to do is it's going to burnish your rings. These are so beautifully cut. But it's going to burnish your rings. At the same time, it's going to deburr them, so that when you're actually making something, you know, this right here is an elfin weave bracelet that I've made. I've made all different kinds of, I used to make earrings galore. In fact, I still kind of do when I actually have time for it. or even something more complex like this little beauty right here, when I run my hand along it, I don't feel any burrs, and that's because I went ahead and tumbled these. Make sure that they're fully dry before you put them in a container so they don't tarnish, and then they're just ready to go. So I hope that that helps you guys out, and I hope that you learned a couple things on using these. Safety is probably one of the most important things when it comes to using this. A high-speed rotary cutting tool is nothing to actually, you know, it's nothing to turn your nose up at. So I'm going to go make some pretty stuff. Talk to you guys later. Bye.